Cyber Threat Brief for February 21, 2026. CISA adds 2 actively exploited Roundcube webmail flaws to KEV catalog with March 13 remediation deadline. Microsoft published CVE 2024-8926, a bypass for the previously exploited PHP CGI vulnerability, CVE 2024-4577, that has ransomware links. Over 30 Linux kernel and library vulnerabilities disclosed across SMB, TLS, crypto, and device driver components. Here's the full breakdown of today's top security stories. Daily Security Brief, February 21, 2026. Next section, Critical Alerts. CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, adds 2 actively exploited Roundcube flaws to KEV, Known Exploited Vulnerabilities Catalog, CVE 2025-49113, CVE 2025-68461. CISA added 2 Roundcube webmail vulnerabilities to the KEV catalog on February 20. CVE 2025-49113, CVSS, the Common Vulnerability Scoring System, 9.9, is a deserialization flaw allowing remote code execution by authenticated users through unvalidated URL parameters in the settings upload handler. The vulnerability has EPS, the Exploit Prediction Scoring System, 0.921 100th percentile, and was hidden in the codebase for over 10 years before discovery. Fears Off researchers confirmed attackers weaponized the exploit within 48 hours of disclosure, and exploits were sold publicly on June 4, 2025. CVE 2025-68461, CVSS 7.2, is in cross-site scripting vulnerability via SVG animate tags. Both flaws were fixed in June and December 2025, respectively. Nation-state groups APT28 and Winter Wyvern have previously exploited Roundcube vulnerabilities. Action: federal agencies must patch by March 13, 2026. Upgrade to Roundcube versions released after December 2025. Check for authenticated user activity around settings uploads and SVG file uploads. Roundcube is commonly targeted by nation-state actors for email access. Sources: The Hacker News. Next section, Vulnerability Disclosures. PHP CGI Parameter Injection Bypass, CVE 2024-8926, Microsoft published information on CVE 2024-8926, a bypass for the PHP CGI parameter injection vulnerability previously added to CISA KEV with ransomware links. Has EPS 0.944, 100th percentile, and a CISA KEV remediation deadline that passed in July 2024. Carries EPS 0.022, 84th percentile, indicating attackers have discovered a method to circumvent the original patch, and 3 additional CVEs. See show notes for the full list. Action: review PHP CGI deployments for both CVE 2024-4577 and CVE 2024-8926 patches. Given the ransomware linkage to the original vulnerability, prioritize environments running PHP in CGI mode. Check Microsoft Security Update Guide for specific patch guidance. Source: MSRC Security Update Guide. Linux kernel SMB, small and medium business, /CIFS vulnerabilities. Microsoft disclosed multiple Linux kernel vulnerabilities affecting SMB/CIFS client and server implementations. CVE 2024-53186 is a use after free in KSMBD request handling. Involves null pointer dereference in SMB2 new read rec. Is a potential null pointer dereference in SMB2 open. Least context handling. Is a double put bug in SMB2 set path size. Affects connection binding marks in KSMBD. Is a use after free under concurrency in KSMBD tree connect put. addresses lock range size underflow issues. All carry low EPS scores 0, 000-0, 001, but affect core file sharing functionality, and 6 additional CVEs. See show notes for the full list. Action: update Linux kernel to latest stable versions. These affect SMB server, KSMBD, and client implementations used for Windows file share access. Relevant for environments running Linux file servers or accessing Windows shares from Linux systems. Sources: MSRC, 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 and 6 additional CVEs. See show notes for the full list. TLS and certificate validation vulnerabilities, multiple TLS and certificate handling vulnerabilities published. CVE 2025-13034 affects quick certificate pinning with GNU TLS. Involves broken TLS options for threaded LDAPs connections. Addresses improper DNS name constraint validation for wildcard certificates in goes crypto/X509. Affects libcurl TLS/SSH connection reuse, incorrectly matching connections despite changed security settings. Is an open SSL partial chain store policy bypass. All carry minimal EPS scores but affect fundamental encryption and identity validation, and 4 additional CVEs. See show notes for the full list. Action: update affected libraries, GNU TLS, Open SSL, Go Crypto packages, libcurl. Pay attention to systems using LDAPs for Active Directory authentication or quick protocols. Certificate validation bypasses enable man-in-the-middle attacks. Sources: MSRC, 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 and 4 additional CVEs. See show notes for the full list. Privilege escalation and memory corruption flaws. CVE 2024-47191 in Oath Toolkit 2.6.7-2.6.11 allows root privilege escalation through symlink mishandling in PAM Oath. So during PAM authentication, is a heap-based buffer overflow in Tiger VNC/Zorgex11 server, enabling privilege escalation. Is a use after free in libcsult before 1.1.43. Causes excessive resource consumption in goes crypto/X509 error string generation. Affects WorksUG safe join, allowing Windows special device names with compound extensions, and 4 additional CVEs. See show notes for the full list. Action: update Oath Toolkit to 2.6.12+, Tiger VNC to latest, libcsult to 1.1.43+, and WorksUG packages. PAM-based authentication systems are critical infrastructure. The WorksUG vulnerability specifically affects Windows deployments of Python web applications. Sources: MSRC, 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 and 4 additional CVEs. See show notes for the full list. Denial of service vulnerabilities. CVE 2025-58436 in CUPS allows slow client connections to halt CUPST, enabling DOS attacks. In libspat through 2.7.3 allows crafted 2MyB files to consume dozens of seconds of processing time. In Russells causes network reachable panic in acceptor. Accept. In libcurl with NSS creates infinite loops when retrieving certificate information, and 3 additional CVEs. See show notes for the full list. Action: update CUPS, libspat to 2.7.4+, Russells, and libcurl. Printing services, CUPS, and XML parsing libspat are common attack surfaces in enterprise environments. The Russells panic affects TLS server implementations. Sources: MSRC, 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 and 3 additional CVEs. See show notes for the full list. Additional Linux kernel vulnerabilities. Over 15 additional Linux kernel CVEs disclosed covering crypto drivers. CVE 2025-68763 display backlight, file system operations, network drivers, watchdog timers, MIPS architecture, clock management, audio, USB, media subsystems, and network scheduling all carry minimal EPS scores and 10 additional CVEs. See show notes for the full list. Action: deploy latest stable kernel updates. While these have low current exploitation probability, kernel vulnerabilities provide privilege escalation and system compromise opportunities once discovered. Sources: multiple MSRC entries covering CVE 2025-68763 and 13 additional CVEs. See show notes for the full list. Historic TLS/crypto library vulnerabilities CVE 2021-24119 in Mbed TLS 2.24.0 is a side-channel vulnerability in base 64 PEM decoding, allowing RSA key extraction in SGX environments. CVE 2020-36426 is a buffer overread in Mbedtools X509 CRL parse-dir. Both have EPS 0.009, 76th percentile, and affect embedded systems and EOT devices. Action: verify Mbed TLS versions are current, especially in embedded systems, EOT devices, and SGX-enabled environments. Side-channel attacks require local access but expose cryptographic keys. Sources: MSRC. Perl Cryptography Module Vulnerability CVE 2025-15444 Crypt Sodium Access Module versions before 0.00042 for Perl include a vulnerable version of libsodium. Action: update crypt Sodium access to 0.00042 or later. Affects Perl applications using this module for cryptographic operations. Source: MSRC. Next section: Trends and Context. Today's disclosure set is dominated by Linux kernel and library vulnerabilities affecting fundamental networking, encryption, and authentication components. The Roundcube KEV editions highlight continued targeting of webmail platforms by nation-state actors. The PHP CVE 2024-8926 bypass demonstrates attackers developing workarounds for previously patched ransomware-linked vulnerabilities. Organizations running Linux infrastructure, particularly for file sharing, web services, and authentication, should prioritize kernel and library updates. That concludes today's cyber threat brief. From Carolina Clear Tech. Stay patched, stay vigilant,